Hi, ladies. Welcome to our Labor and Beyond workshop. We're so excited to bring this great information to you. I know it's going to be so helpful as you get ready for your labor experience and bringing your baby home. I felt this really weird, like, whoa, inside. That's the only way I can describe it. And I was like, okay, that was it. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm in labor. Obviously I didn't walk in screaming with contractions. So they were like, oh, she's way too calm. She's just being dramatic. She's being a first-time mom. She is not in labor. And she's like, oh my God, you're 70% effaced and 5 centimeters dilated. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. If I was able to get to 5 centimeters and I'm like totally fine, I can totally do this. And if this happened from 4 a.m. until 10 a.m, that means what? I have 4 more hours and everything will be done. 3 o'clock, baby's out. I know it, I was calculating on like, okay, this hour and this hour, but that's not how it works. The Pitocin started at 2:59 p.m. She's like, all right, I'll come in around 6 and check you. By then, the contractions started getting really strong. And I was like, hey, I'm not going to be that girl that's like screaming. Why are you screaming? Like you can control that. Why are you screaming? I was screaming. It was like menstrual cramps times 1,000. But you know what? The most amazing part is how strong our minds are. So all I knew to do to release that pain was to breathe, to scream when I had to, and to tell myself over and over and over again, I can do anything for a minute. I can do anything for a minute. I could do anything for a minute. And I didn't remember anything my mom said. I didn't remember anything. All I remembered in my mind was, I can do anything for a minute. I can do anything for a minute. And sometimes I would even count 1, 2, 3. And honestly, it didn't even last a minute. The contraction did not last a minute. But I was telling myself, I can do anything for a minute. I can do anything for a minute. And I would feel it start after the peak coming down. And then I'm like, yes, I did it. I did it. Did it. So it was about 9. She's like, let's prep for the C-section. If you're willing, are you okay? Are you open to that? I know you're open to anything and that, we suggest, and giving you your space. Are you okay with that? So I used my brain paper. If you haven't seen that, check that out in my group. What they've made it out to be my whole life, the epidural. Oh my God, you're going to be paralyzed from the waist down. I know a girl, everyone has an I know someone story, right? And they're always bad. No one tells you, I know someone who had a great labor, or I know someone who did this and that. Everyone's like, my coworker, when I was younger, she had a baby and it's just the worst. Everyone has the worst stories to tell. I don't know why they tell you that. So I got the epidural. I just felt a strong pinch in my back. I was so scared that when I get the epidural, I go like this and like paralyze myself forever. She's like, oh, just try, just see. And I told the doctor, can we try one more thing? Can we just try to empty my bladder? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's try that and see if that helps. Sometimes that helps. So they did. They put the catheter in and they emptied my bladder, and then the baby was born like 20 minutes later. So I got the epidural like half an hour before I had the baby, but it was the best half hour of my labor. And let me tell you what it feels like to get a contraction during the epidural or with the epidural. So I always heard that you're numb from the waist down, you're like dead, you're completely dead, you feel nothing. And in my experience, that was not true. My legs were numb, like when your legs fall asleep. But I felt, the nurse told me and the doctor told me, you're going to feel pressure. So when you feel pressure, start saying pressure, pressure, pressure. And that lets us know that you want to push, that it's time to push. And they were already like checking me, looking to see if the baby was making any progress. So when I would say pressure, she's like, you got it, you're right. So my feeling of pressure was correct and accurate with what they were seeing of the baby progress. So you should feel pressure. I didn't feel what they call the ring of fire, anything like that, maybe because I had the epidural. It was an amazing experience. I felt the pressure. I knew when to push, and I pushed my baby out. I'm going to let Ivy take over now, and she is an awesome doula in Canada. I wanted to share my experience as a first-time mom who had a baby during COVID and tell you what it was, all the steps that I went through from walking into labor and delivery, from the contraction to walking in, to the check-in, to all the options, medical options, what I did when I was confused, when I was scared, when I was overwhelmed, how I found a way to make those medical decisions and feel confident. And that is through using my brain, which I talked about. So I'm going to let Ivy take over and tell us the doula side and what she commonly sees in first time moms, and the things that she can help you with to feel prepared for your labor experience. And then tomorrow we'll be talking about, unless we forget to cover something here, but tomorrow we'll be talking about our first week home with baby. Well, you were going to talk about post labor also today, and your first week home with baby tomorrow, your relationship, how that's going to change, because a lot of moms, including myself, are not ready for that kind of change. Don't expect it. It hits you like a ton of bricks, and it's just like one more thing to think about when you're so tired and you feel overwhelmed. So we'll talk about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. I'll share my experience in those also. It was very difficult, but there are ways to help and ways to not suffer in silence when you have the right support. So Ivy, tell us about what you see. First, introduce yourself, and then tell us about what you commonly see first-time moms kind of suffer through the most when it comes to feeling unprepared in their first time mom experience in labor.
The first thing I'm going to start with is just sort of how to create a comfortable birth environment, whether that's at home or in a hospital. It doesn't need to be at home to be peaceful, if that's your point of view. It doesn't need to be at a hospital to be comfortable. And I do an exercise with my clients that I think is wonderful. That really helps people sort of assess what's important to them, what will help them feel comfortable. And it's not as super straightforward as it seems, but it's very easy to understand. So I ask a series of questions. One, take a moment and picture your happy place. So for me, it's in a meadow. Like, that's beautiful and calming and relaxing. That doesn't mean I want to have a baby in a meadow, but that's my safe space. And just finding ways to tweak whatever environment you're in to make it the most comfortable for you can go a long way to making your labor a more positive experience. I'm going to talk about some ways to kind of assess if you think you're in labor or not. People always talk about your water breaking or contractions starting, and those are kind of the solid, okay, this is actually happening. But there are a few sort of subtle signs that will show up in the week or two before you go into labor. So if you're noticing them, it doesn't mean go to the hospital, but it just kind of make sure your bag is packed, make sure you try to get some sleep, have a good, comfortable meal, like get yourself kind of in the zone. And those things, I'm sure you've all heard of your bloody show or the loss of your mucus plug. This is your cervix, as it starts to soften, it will drop that mucus plug. And that doesn't mean that baby's coming right now, but sometimes your body will create a new mucus plugs if it's too early. But typically it means things are starting to change. Your body is getting ready for baby to arrive. When your water breaks, when your membranes rupture, sometimes it can be a big gush, it can be a big flood. But it's also quite common that it's kind of like a little trickle. You don't really notice. It kind of seems like when you're laughing too hard and you pee yourself a little bit and your underwear is just a tiny little bit wet and you're like, huh, that's weird. Okay. Sometimes that's all it is, but it'll be consistent for like a day or two. And you're like, okay, this is like strange.
It's just trickling for a day or two?
Yeah, sometimes it can be very slow, very subtle. You don't really feel it. And then every now and then when you go to the washroom, you're just like, huh, my underwear is like damp or whatever. And
how do you know if that's different than pee coming out or, any like normal discharge? How would you be able to tell?
Yes. So color and smell are the two main ways to tell the difference. Braxton Hicks versus true labor. If you are a person that feels sort of period cramps in the front of your abdomen, Braxton Hicks can feel very similar. It's a little bit stronger, but more dull at the same time. It doesn't pulse the same way as maybe period cramps do. And if you picture your uterus as like this big circle, Braxton Hicks often kind of feel like the sides are closing in and just kind of practicing. It's not really painful. True labor contractions, often you feel them kind of, there's a muscle, I forget what it's called. There's a muscle that kind of goes over the back of your hips across into the front of your belly that kind of holds everything in. So as your uterus during true contractions, it's more the top pushing down on baby, which is why nausea and stuff happens too, because those muscles are moving more. And often you'll feel more tension on these muscles that are attached to your hips, because as everything shifts at the top, the weight pulls differently in your belly and you feel sort of that tension. Some people go all the way through the first 2 stages of labor and they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how we mark when to go to the hospital, if that's your plan as well, is are you coping?
Another thing that you said that I really loved was baby's journey is allowed to be different. There's 2 exits, and we all assume that the exit, unless we have a medical problem, we're assuming we're going to deliver vaginally. And I love that perspective because baby can choose their own journey.
If you are stressed, that blocks oxytocin. It will slow down your labor by slowing down contractions. And because the contractions aren't happening through oxytocin, the pain management signals aren't being produced. They're kind of getting lost. So oftentimes pain is a lot more heightened, which can lead to unplanned medical pain management or unplanned interventions because it's just too much. Birth is natural. No matter how it happens, it's natural. No matter how baby's born, I didn't fail. So it's not a bad thing if you end up with an unplanned C-section. You haven't failed at birth. Baby just went out the window instead of the front door.
I love that.
Way out, right? You don't need to do it the exact way that you necessarily planned for you to do it. And no matter how baby arrives, it's a gift and it's a beautiful thing that should be celebrated. And so even if you have the ability to choose a plan, it's not a dire emergency, and you've chosen maybe a C-section or some other interventions that weren't on your original plan, you shouldn't feel sort of stressed about that. You shouldn't feel like that was a mistake or that you failed in any way, because baby's still here. And that's the goal, and that's what you wanted. And it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. And things, hell, nothing goes to plan.
I know it's so important to have the right support, whether it's myself as a coach or a doula by your side. If you have support, we're going to talk about that tomorrow also, the importance of the right support, because we all have family and friends, most of us, that are willing to give us their experience, but they're not taking you to where you want to be. And that's what I provide as a coach. Where do you want to be? I can tell you my experience. I love my experience. And maybe I would change a couple of things, but that's irrelevant to what you want. So my job is to get you where you want to be and to get you peace of mind and to get you feeling like I don't have all the answers, and that's okay, but I'm going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And the mission will be completed, as Ivy said. So I'm so excited for tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to cover what happens after labor. We're going to cover your first week home with baby, because if you don't have the right support, if you don't have a team of people that are just on your side, not anything, no medical, motivation, no ulterior motives is the word I'm looking for. If someone is just there for you, you can make your birth experience and your postpartum experience so different if you are willing to invest in yourself. Because I know sometimes it gets so scary when we make that decision of like, yes, this is for me. I need this kind of support. I need someone on my side. I need someone to explain this to me, because I've read all the information. I've talked to my mom, my grandma, and they tell me everything they did and tell me I need to do it that way. And I don't want to do it that way. So that was my case. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But your youngest child is 31 years old, and that's me. So I think things have changed a little bit, and theories have changed, studies have happened. So it gets really frustrating. And a lot of people brush off your worries, your fears, your questions as just being a first time mom. A lot of times they put the baby in your arms and you're like, okay, well, I think, I don't know, maybe we should just do a feeding again, or we should check the pamper, or you stall because you're like, I need help, but I'm not confident to take the baby home. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to expect. So tomorrow is going to be another amazing workshop. This was so fun, and I just look forward to getting all your feedback and hearing how amazing this has been for you, because I know this is so rich with information, and it's nothing like Google where you just read and read and read. Like, you're getting people talking, explaining, and getting you set up to be prepared for your labor experience.